The opinions expressed on Plastic Fantastic are intended for educational and informational purposes only and are not meant as a diagnosis, treatment, or substitute for professional medical advice. The mention of any product, treatment, or procedure on the show does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation and is purely for the information and education of the public.
Welcome to Plastic Fantastic, a weekly show dedicated to the latest in plastic surgery, aesthetics, beauty, and wellness. Now, here are your hosts, board-certified surgeons Dr. Robert Silich and Dr. Olivia Hutchinson.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good morrow.
Welcome.
Welcome one and all. And I mean the one, the listener.
And the all.
You mean the all, I mean the listener. Welcome to Plastic Fantastic.
With Dr. Robert Silich.
And Dr. Olivia Hutchinson. Welcome to summer.
Yet another fabulous episode that we're going to be discussing all sorts of interesting topics that have nothing to do with plastic surgery, or maybe just a little bit.
We're going to call it See One, Do One, Teach One, right? Isn't that what you said?
I think that's what you said. I was going to just call it...
That's what she said.
at the picnic.
So funny.
I was going to call it education because we're always learning, we're always teaching.
Oh my God, that's really boring.
And you came up with something much more interesting.
You know why we should talk about this? Because interestingly enough, in our line of work, education turns on July 1st, which we're not near, but we are near. We're approaching it.
We're within the month.
We're well into June.
I actually thought we were going to talk about learning new things because...
Yeah, we'll get to that.
In the movies, can we just jump to the movies?
Perfect.
What's it called? The Tom Cruise Maverick, right? The Top Gun Maverick?
Top Gun, baby.
Apparently there's a kid whose name is Maverick.
There's probably a lot of them.
I know.
Oh, you mean in general or in the movie?
No, not in the movie. In real life.
Of course there is.
Yeah.
Do you know what Mavericks is?
Mavericks? Plural. No, I don't. See, here we go. This is a prime example. You never know what you're going to learn,
right?
Or who you're going to learn it from.
Mavericks is a area near San Francisco known for surfing. It's called Mavericks. It's really dangerous, really cold.
Scary.
And really scary and really cool. There's a great movie called Riding Giants, a documentary about surfing.
Interesting.
And Mavericks features pretty heavy in it. You can only do it in like a wetsuit all year round. It's cold. There's sharks.
Oh, lovely.
It's very dangerous. I know. Doesn't it sound appealing?
Cold, dangerous, and scary are three of my least favorite things.
But apparently it's massive waves. It's for big wave surfing. Mavericks.
Have you done it? Have you been there?
No.
Oh, okay. Is that on your bucket list?
Nope, because I'm not that good a surfer.
Well, you could be.
Sounds cool, but I'm not that good.
If you start teaching yourself.
See?
So tell us about this expression. What does it mean? Where does it come from?
So when you get to medical school, whatever procedure it is or whatever thing you do, it's usually related to a procedure. You see one done by somebody else, one of the senior people, then you do one yourself, and then you teach one. So that turned into see one, do one, teach one. Now, it's really not that quick, but the concept of it is...
And there you have it. There's medical school and
education moves quickly. You got to kind of jump right in medicine, and obviously, you know, you do it under the auspices of somebody, yes. Right, more senior, but then you have to give something back. So it's this nice little cycle of medical education that happens. Now, one of the things interesting about medical education is up until about 1920-something, it was based on the apprenticeship system, which literally was see one, do one, teach one. Right.
The sorcerer's apprentice.
Exactly.
Where's your magic wand?
Exactly. And the robe and the stardust and the whole thing.
We still wear those.
That's a Disney movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
A cartoon.
Yeah, but it's got all sorts of like Tchaikovsky music in it.
That's
and everything,
Fantasia.
Right? Isn't Sorcerer's Apprentice part of Fantasia? It's a whole movie in and of itself?
Correct, you're right. It's part of Fantasia.
Check out the big brain on Bobby. I got one right. Usually you're correcting me. I got that one right.
You would never want to go head-to-head discussing things with Dr. Silich.
You are listening to Plastic Fantastic with the erudite Dr. Olivia Hutchinson.
When it comes to movies and cartoons, especially the ones for kids. And Dr. Robert Silich.
If you'd like to email us about this, please do so at plasticfantasticshow@gmail.com. Anyway, so back to that. Somewhere around 1920...
Robes, what were we talking about?
Sorcerer's Apprentice. Somewhere around 1920, they decided to do away with the apprenticeship model of medicine and make it formal. Formal residency programs, internship. Prior to that, they actually didn't have it. And that's why there was no way to really regulate what your training was. So they standardized that, and that was known as...
And knowledge, of course, which was also just picked up by...
And it's also too random. You could apprentice with a great guy or an idiot.
Hopefully more of the former than the latter.
A cretin, as we call them.
Can't call anyone anything.
Yeah, that's
anymore.
right. I apologize, by the way.
Take that word back.
Sorry. So anyway, it's more standardized now, and that was known as the Flexner Report, and that was named after, I guess, Dr. Flexner, who came up with that. And that's kind of the standard that we do today. And there's still a little bit of C1, Do1, Teach1, especially in surgery, which you and I do.
The residency programs are accredited by the American Committee for Graduate Medical Education. Is that what ACGME stands for?
Yeah.
Something like that. And so, as you say, they're very strict guidelines in terms of how a program becomes accredited, how it remains accredited, what you need to continue with that process. And then there are site visits and inspections. And then, of course, the residents have to also pass some tests. It's really interesting, when you talk to some of the younger generation, the kids who come out of college and think that they're going to go to medical school. And once they're done with medical school, they're going to be done with exams and test taking. And it's quite the opposite. It just goes on and on. Their licensing exams. Never ends, right.
If you like taking tests, be a doctor.
Be a doctor. But it is nice that they have some very precise guidelines in terms of what a program needs, what kind of training there is going to be. As we see in medicine and in various other professions, we're constantly reevaluating how we're teaching the residents, what they've learned, what the different subject matters are in terms of the advances that have been made. I mean, most recently, certainly in our field of work, there have been some significant technological and scientific advances that are made in regenerative medicine, the use of scaffolds to act as a structure that you can then populate with stem cells and then
Where are you
recreate.
going with this? How do we get on scaffolding?
It's education. It's what you're learning when you're in
I
residency.
didn't learn about that.
You didn't because it wasn't available. That's exactly my point. So you have to keep up with the times.
CMEs.
It's constantly updating what you need to learn. Robotics. I mean, you work with the cardiac surgeon, so you know that some of those guys, and not just cardiac surgeons, urologists, general surgeons, all sorts of different types of specialties where they use robot-assisted surgical procedures are performed that way. As we progress in medicine and surgery, we need to make sure that the programs are able to offer those types of surgeries for their residents and obviously educate them. The other thing I wanted to say is that after your residency training, what people don't really understand, what fellows do. There are fellowships.
So let's do
which
those
come
three things.
After your residency.
So let's do intern, resident, fellow. What's the difference between those three
fellow.
things?
Now,
Hello.
are they going to keep hello, fellow?
They probably can't say fellow anymore because of all the
Well, that's what the F
women
in
and
FACS
and gender
stands for,
fluid
right?
people.
Yeah, I guess at some
Fellas.
point they're going to have
Hey,
to.
fellas.
Maybe it's just going to be FELLA
Oh, hey fella.
or Felix.
But even that is like, wow, nice. Check you out.
Latinx.
Even that, though, I think is not
Just
a
coming
fella.
up
It's
with-
just a casual fellow, isn't it? Hey
right.
fella. Good
I don't.
fellas.
Maybe it's not
Cinder fella.
Goodfellas. Ray Liotta,
Oh,
R.I.P.
Dude, I love
So
that guy.
we're very sorry. We have to go back to movies. No matter what we do, we always end up
I
back
love
on
it,
the
though.
movies.
Why not? God, what a good movie, and what a great Ray Liotta.
Yeah, I mean, that was about boys. Maybe the Fellowship of Man. I think there are lots of different
No, you're
instances where you use fellow and it's not really a gender-specific term. But so
I think
back
that's
to your,
true because you could be like a fellow at the Cato Institute or something like that, and that's
Right.
men and women. What's
So-
the Cato Institute?
It's an institute.
Thank you. I
called
see it
after
on.
Cato.
It's not about the
It's a thinking thing.
Green Lantern guy.
Who's
Wasn't
the
that
Green
Cato and the Green Lantern? Wasn't that a thing in the 60s?
No, I'm thinking Cato and Peter Sellers and Inspector Clouseau.
It's kind of related to that because Cato,
But I think you spell it differently.
Bruce Lee played him in this thing I'm thinking about.
Oh.
I'll
So
come up
Cato
with
was the K. See, if we're going to talk about movies, we should really have our facts and data.
Well, it's so much more fun.
Well, just say any random nonsense.
Go back to that, though. Interns, residents, and fellows. So an intern is just a first-year resident. First year out of medical school.
Right. And some internships are standalone. So once you are done with your medical schooling, and I'm sure that some of this is going to change because, like I said, they're constantly reevaluating how many years kids, let's call them kids, are spending in school right now and how many years each residency program is. But once you're done with medical school, you go into the match program, and that is where some massive computer decides where each individual student is going to be matched for their internship or residency. And so on match day, which is March 17th or some Wednesday in March, you find out where you've been slotted. So your first year, which, as you were saying, usually starts July 1st, is when all the residents and interns start their work. You show up at the hospital and you start your education. So the internship can either be just the first year, which is usually referred to as a preliminary year, or it can be part of the residency. And the residency really goes to all the different medical specialties that people think of. So either internal medicine, general surgery, those are the big tracks. And then orthopedics, ENT, all these, they all have the first year of internship. And then the remainder of the training is called the residency.
Yeah, like our anesthesiologist, she had to do an internship in something before she went into anesthesia. So she did surgery. You could do medicine, or you could do, I guess you could rotate it maybe.
Yes, that's right. And because it's a first year, it's more of a potpourri of experiences. It's not necessarily slotted as a particular field or just super narrow field. And then you do your residency, which is, I think the shortest one is maybe 3 years. And then
family practice,
something like that. And then some of the longer ones, general surgery is longer. And then beyond that, if you want to specialize, then you would do a fellowship. And so the fellowship is a super specialty training. For example, vascular surgery, cardiac surgery. If you're going to do medicine, you can then do pulmonary medicine or cardiology. All of those are fellowships that are done afterwards. And that's pretty much all I know about the medical training.
I was going to say, can we go back to Top Gun? I know, my God, I told everybody everything.
That's it. That's all really you need to know.
But that's education, though. And there's a didactic part of it, and there is also a technical side to it. We actually have to learn how to technically operate and do procedures. So it's a whole potpourri, as you say, of education. You're listening to Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Olivia Hutchinson.
And Dr. Robert Silic.
Today we're talking a little bit about medical education. The reason this is timely is on July 1st is usually the first day of internship for those medical school graduates. Now, lately they've been moving it a little bit earlier. They kind of do... Yeah.
Oh, you mean like, so there's a crossover?
Yeah.
Because remember way back when it was June 30th ended and July 1st started, and never
out
the
with
twain
the old,
shall meet.
in with the new, right. And they used to say, don't get sick in July, which, by the way, is a myth. You can absolutely get sick in July. You'll be fine.
There are multiple layers, and there are plenty of people who are around to supervise and make sure everything goes smoothly. But that was the common thread, the joke, the running joke. Don't show up in the hospital in July because you're not going to be taken care of properly.
So they start the new residents usually a little bit earlier, sometimes in the middle of June, to get oriented and to do all that stuff. And we should say that interns or first-year residents are not licensed yet in medicine. Usually you need that first year, and you take the third part of your exam in your internship to give you your medical license. So you're kind of in this weird phase of your career where you have an MD degree. Right. You have an MD degree from medical school, but you're not yet a licensed physician. That comes at the end of your first year. Anyway, we're going to take a little break, come back.
Yeah. And
talk more schooling.
No, we're going to talk about Tom Cruise.
Thank you.
And Maverick, Top Gun, all the things that you can still learn, because unlike the expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We're not calling anyone old, of course.
Or a dog. For that matter.
That's a compliment, I think, for some people.
Right. So true. It's a good animal.
It's a great animal.
It really is. Like, what's the big deal?
You can learn things as you get older, and part of our training and our practice is to keep abreast of all the new developments in surgery and to constantly be teaching ourselves and our fellow colleagues and plastic surgeons. You're listening to Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Robert Silic
and Dr. Olivia Hutchinson. Wow, quickly. We'll be right back after this.
I thought you were yawning. I thought you were done.
No, I was here. I was just stretching.
We'll be right back.
This is Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Robert Silic and Dr. Olivia Hutchinson.
There's this place, a place where everyone is just beautiful. Where everyone is thin, healthy, and in fantastic shape. It's a place where the beautiful people can eat whatever they want, whenever they want, and never gain weight. Where pro basketball players slam dunk chicken nuggets. Hard-bodied supermodels supersize their soft drinks. Thousands of weight loss diets guarantee you'll shed those stubborn pounds in days. Don't believe us? Just flip on your TV, look up at a billboard, or scroll through your social media feed for proof that everyone and everything here is just perfect. Where is here, you ask? Well, welcome to the state of America. Welcome to Obesity USA. Population 115 million and getting bigger by the day. To learn more, go to visitobesity.org. That's visitobecity.org. Brought to you by the Pennington Biomedical Research Foundation.
Hi, I'm E.J. Williams for American Humane. For thousands of years, dogs have been our best friends in our worst times. Today, we're also learning that our best friends, millions of whom are abandoned each year, are often the best medicine when people are facing obstacles. To help both people and animals, organizations like American Humane have been working to harness the healing power of the human-animal bond, finding animals in need of forever homes and training them as life-saving service and therapy dogs to help our veterans, the elderly, and children overcome the daily obstacles of life. In this way, the rescued can become the rescuers. To find out how you can help give animals and the people they help a new leash on life, please visit AmericanHumane.org.
Never miss an episode. Download Plastic Fantastic on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, or wherever major podcasts are found. Simply search Plastic Fantastic. Now, here are board-certified surgeons Dr. Robert Silich and Dr. Olivia Hutchinson.
Back to Top Gun. One of the things that we wanted to talk about, I have yet to corroborate this, but I've heard this from a lot of different sources, is that Tom Cruise actually learned how to do a lot of the things that he performs in the movie. So he actually went and flew with the Navy pilots. He had some practical lessons in flying a jet plane. The stunts, apparently, he learns how to do all those things, flying helicopters, riding motorcycles, jumping out of planes.
I'm not surprised. He does everything.
Yeah. So, which doesn't mean anything in terms of him pretending like he's not doing it. That's not it at all. But he's clearly a very versatile individual when it comes to learning things. But it also, I think, just adds to the experience. I think that's why this movie has been so highly touted, is that it's not just CGI and computers pretending
good
that they're doing
American popcorn movie.
Yeah. Which apparently there's also...
Don't say it, because I'm not going to stop eating popcorn.
No, the popcorn situation.
I don't want to hear it. What? There's a shortage?
Yes.
I don't care. I'll pay whatever it costs. Send more popcorn and send it to plasticfantasticshow@gmail.com. Send more popcorn.
Send an email full of popcorn. No, there was an article about that. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal. What? We'd have to go back and see it.
And meaning that there's less of it around?
In the movie theaters, that there are problems with supplies, just like there are supply chain issues across the board.
What's the point?
And I don't understand it, because I thought that corn was in plentiful supply, but what can I tell you? If
I don't
go to
care
the
if
movies,
they double the price of it. I'm paying for it.
Well, it's already, what, $50 for a cup of popcorn? So.
By the way, did you see the Queen at the Jubilee?
She was doing great. I think
Unbelievable.
They canceled one of her appearances or something, but
God save her.
She looked fabulous, and she had a big smile. You don't really see her smiling or showing her teeth, right? That's one of the...
She's got a lot to smile about,
behavior. Well, she's
her.
What, 94? 70th year?
I thought she was 96.
Maybe
I'm wrong. Yeah, I think she is.
Mid-90s.
Amazing, whatever
70
it is.
years.
Good
Can you imagine
for her.
doing anything for 70 years?
You know, her mother lived to be 106.
Yes.
Right?
So she's got good, something, over 100.
Yeah. Actually, I'm sorry.
The
over
Queen
100.
Mum.
I think you're right, yeah. So this might be the last Jubilee, but you never know. It's just remarkable.
We're going to keep her active.
What I found interesting is that somebody was saying there are a whole generation of people that were born when she was the monarch, lived their whole lives, had a career, and now are retired, and she's still the queen.
She's still the queen.
Unbelievable.
So
the
who comes
first
next
president she
after?
met was Truman.
That's crazy.
Is that crazy? Like, I met Harry S. Truman.
Did you see the show, The Queen? There were 3 seasons, I think, of it.
The Crown.
Excuse me, The Crown.
I
Yes.
love it. Even if it's not true.
It was about the Queen.
I love it. Yeah.
They have to invent things, I think,
Invent
a little
more.
bit.
Seriously, have Charles be
We
like a
don't care.
war hero or something.
Dr.
I don't
Silich
care. I'm
would
buying
love
it.
it. Yeah.
Buy me more popcorn and send more episodes of The Crown.
On
Amen.
that note, he has now fully retired because he just wants to put his feet up and watch some movies.
And watch The Crown. Amen.
So when are you going to go see Maverick?
I feel I'm already so behind. Everybody saw it but me.
So we were talking about how things have changed in New York. And one of the few things that has changed for the better in New York City is the movie theaters. And
For the better,
because a lot of the movie theaters have now these reclining seats.
Yeah, they are cool.
You can reserve your tickets ahead of time. So
Easier to fall asleep.
Depends what movie you go see. But you can choose where you sit. People like the aisle, whatever. It's not like the mad dash to get. And the one thing you don't know is who's going to be sitting in front of you. So if there's somebody who's 7 feet tall, hopefully they're just going to recline all the way.
Even the 7-footers in those recliners, it's not as bad.
Yeah, no, they're flat.
Yeah.
And then you can just shove their heads down.
Totally.
Just reach forward and push them down.
Throw your candy at them. What do you get at the movie theater? What's your candy of choice, or what's
Popcorn.
your snack? Me too.
Yeah,
I'm a popcorn guy.
But now,
what's your beverage?
Another thing Coca-Cola.
Real good old-fashioned, yes. The champagne of America, Coca-Cola. Are you serious?
I am. If they had drinks, I would have
Not
drinks.
Diet Coke?
Ooh, no.
Wow,
I don't do...
Interesting. Not Coke Zero?
Ooh,
just
none
Coke.
of those things. I'm the... You know me. I'm the
classic.
classic.
Olivia, you are classic.
Classic
I love
fantastic.
That about you. You really are. Classic, fantastic, plastic, fantastic. Good for you.
So the other thing
Seriously.
that I've noticed is that there are quite a few, and I stand by my ground.
I like that. Good. Stand by it.
Quite a few movie theaters now that will also serve food, and not just popcorn and candy as we were discussing, but actual meals and real drinks, and they'll have table service. So you'll have I'm not sure if their chairs or the seats recline all the way, but at least you can sit.
Do they have one of those here?
They do. They have a couple. There's one downtown. Now, I'm talking pre-COVID.
Yeah,
so maybe
there was one I remember on the west side in the 50s.
There was, right.
That closed. That didn't reopen. I know.
Okay, wow.
But when you go to Florida and D.C.
Maybe our listeners can spread the word that
we'd
like
to find out. We do. Send more popcorn.
We would like to have
Fantastic.
those movie theaters open up again where you can sit and have table service.
I know they have them in Florida, and I know they have them in D.C. because those are two places I've been to recently. Not to the theaters, but everybody there talks about those theaters where you can get wine and food, and it's a whole event.
Just changes the experience because then it's not just watching a movie, because it's quite easy to fall asleep in the movie theater, especially if it's not an action-adventure one, but if it's just drama and you have to pay attention and there isn't any loud music to jolt you awake. It's nice and dark. You're reclining.
I'm falling asleep right now. Notice I'm doing the head bob thing right now. You're killing me.
You're just thinking about falling asleep. We'll take those restaurants back. And it's a supply and demand thing like everything else. If you build it, he will come. They will come. What's the expression? They will come.
Field of Dreams.
Mm-hmm. So we need some more movie theaters. But New York City is definitely having a comeback. There are so many people everywhere.
So many rats, too, by the way.
I know, but
Sorry
we're not
to bring you down. I'm just saying.
We need the Pied Piper. Who's going to be that? Mayor Adams? Shall we give him a pipe to lead the rats out?
The reason we're bringing this up is there was an article in the paper last week about the increase in the sightings of rats in New York, and they correlated it to the outdoor restaurants.
Where do you report those sightings?
311.
Oh, really? You just call and you tell them? And what do they do about it?
I don't know. You get a recording. I don't think so. I guess they listen to the recording.
Do you get a prize?
I don't know. I guess they looked at it. There's
You're
these
the 1,000th
rodentologists that actually look into this. I'm not kidding.
Is that a word? You just made that up?
No. I swear, rodentologists. We had to hire one of these guys to come to my apartment building because we had a problem a couple of years ago. Yeah.
I thought you were saying like a road and Todd.
No. Rodentologist.
Okay.
I didn't make it up. Don't give me that okay. I didn't make it up. I'm telling you, it's a real word.
So what does the person do?
They study rodents. They basically figure out what your problem is. Like they'll say, okay, you've got a food area here that's not protected, not enclosed. Okay. Or there could be a structural problem. Right, like you could have a sewer area that's open in the bottom of these buildings. And apparently there's a difference between the east side rat and the west side rat.
Really?
Has to do with
one's more snooty than the other?
Probably. One has a family, one's a single, bon vivant. Apparently it has something to do with the type of, I think on the east side, the sewer system is more modern in New York City.
Really?
And there's less brick. Whereas on the west side, they actually have brick-lined sewer systems, and the rats are able to hold on to the brick-lined sewer system, and that's why there's more of them, supposedly.
Like they put their claws into the bricks? And so
I don't want to get too specific because the listener out there might get a little queasy, but yeah, that's basically what's going on.
By the way, that has nothing to do with plastic surgery.
We really went down on the tangent, down the rabbit hole.
We're going, down the rat hole.
Man, really, rats.
Running away from education.
What kind of show is this? Well, let's get back
thinking.
to education. One of the things we should talk about is continuing education, which not only is a good thing, but it's a requirement.
It's mandatory
for us. We have to do it. Funny, they have this in architecture. Architects have this. Law, which is like a joke. Accountants.
Accountants?
Yep, because the tax code changes all the time. I didn't know this.
Okay.
But apparently it's a big thing in accounting for CPAs.
And do you know how often they do it?
No, but I know for architects it's important. We do it in like a 2 or 3 year cycle now, right? Isn't that?
Right. So
used to be every year. Now they give us a 3 year cycle
right,
to do it.
And you just have to do cumulative. And of course, now that we had COVID, because one of the areas that we get CMEs is the expression, is the abbreviation. So that stands for continuing medical education. Lots of different ways that you can build up these credits for CME, and everything from, well, not doing the podcast, unfortunately. we should count
this. Doesn't count? Oh my God.
Maybe
it
does.
And amend
I don't count
website.
it because I feel like it's more fun than
Isn't
it should
though?
be. Reading articles, doing conferences in person or even virtually now, remotely, teaching residents, scrubbing in with the fellows in aesthetic surgery or the plastic surgery residents.
Making teaching rounds.
Anytime that you're interacting in some capacity. And also when you're doing the conferences, they have national conferences. So those are the areas where you can really gain a lot of CME credits in one sitting. The American Society of Plastic Surgeons does a yearly conference, and then the Aesthetic Society, ASAPS.
You and I just went to one recently.
Does
virtually, that is.
Virtually, yes. So now with COVID, and I think it's very different, honestly. When you're there in person, there are all these chance encounters. You're sort of hobnobbing and rubbing shoulders with people that you don't see because everybody's in a different city or even internationally. There are lots of, that's actually what I find really interesting. There's tons of international plastic surgeons who come to these meetings.
Yeah.
So those are the two main ones. And besides those, then you can add some more medical education credits.
That's why it's also, it's so good to ask your doctors or to have your physicians be on staff at hospitals, or to obviously to ask if they're board certified as well, because inclusive of that is the CME system, which is the continuing medical education. So if somebody is on staff, let's say at the hospital where you and I work, you know they are not able to keep their privileges at the hospital or to stay on the staff unless they've demonstrated how many continuing medical education credits they've done in a cycle. And same thing goes for board certification. And your continuing education within the American Board of Plastic Surgery allows you to increase your CME credits by participating in these exams and study activities and things that we have to do.
And one of the interesting things also that a lot of people don't realize is that in order to maintain your privileges or to be able to practice in your office the way that we do, where we have an operating room here, you do need to have privileges at the hospital to be doing those same procedures. So that has to do with patient safety, to make sure that if for whatever reason there's a complication after surgery or the patient needs to be hospitalized for any reason, that the surgeon who treated that patient can continue to provide the care that they need. So it's always based on looking out for the patient, maximizing safety protocols for the patient, and making sure that they can receive the very best care. So lots of things that sort of go on behind the scenes that you might not know. We try to pull the curtain back and reveal the great magician behind the curtain.
Do you like that movie, Wizard of Oz? Yeah, see, that's how I feel. I'm so with you. I'm so glad you did that.
Not one of my favorites. Not one of my
creepy, right?
I mean, a classic, but
so what's creepy about it? The little people, the colorization, the flying monkeys.
I think it's kind of scary in a lot of ways. It's
totally.
Not really like
I'm never into it.
Pleasant thing, and then it's also
how was the book?
There was.
I'm not kidding because I didn't read the book.
Was there a book? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, by the way,
the wizard.
I got so many emails about our last show about Snow White. I got to tell you.
We can't say Snow White anymore?
No, we could say it, but we were so off. It was not Hans Christian Andersen. Brothers Grimm.
Did we say the wrong one?
Yeah, we said Hans Christian Andersen.
Whatever.
Nice attitude, madame. Yeah, it's the Brothers Grimm. Makes sense.
You can send us emails about all the things that we say wrong on the show. Please email us at plasticfantasticshow@gmail.com.
That's right.
That's because we are human, and human beings make mistakes.
Yep.
It's only human.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Robert Silich.
And Dr. Olivia Hutchinson. We're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Robert Silich and Dr. Olivia Hutchinson.
There's a child in Kenya, or Sierra Leone, or India, or Bolivia, who you could connect with. And through Child Fund, it's possible. We may be thousands of miles apart, but we can still connect with each other. And when we do, we make things better. We connect children all around the world with what they need to grow up healthy, educated, and safe. That's what Child Fund is about. Together, we co-create, support, and sustain connections that lead to greater well-being for millions of children who live in poverty worldwide, and their families, and their communities, and their countries, and you. Join us. Together, we can make the world a better place. 2 small worlds at a time. His and yours. Visit childfund.org to learn more.
Plastic Fantastic.
So education, school. We're not doing our back to school show yet because those kids are still in school, just about finishing, right?
Did you notice how many schools have already let out in New York, though? The teachers, I mean, I don't know.
We're talking public school, private school, all school.
public schools go, I think, till July, and then they start up again in August. I think it's like the shortest summer
ridiculous.
ever.
In Japan, they don't have summer breaks. Very abbreviated. It may be like a week or two, and that's it. They kind of go through, which I never knew.
Why? Because it's too hot?
Because they're Japanese, and that's why they're beating us and everything. Come on.
Well, I do remember reading an article about the Indian Institute of Technology. This was years ago, by the way. This is not something recent.
IIT?
Yes. How those kids
just made that up.
It's true, though. That's what
I got you.
It's the MIT of India.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because there are all these engineers that were coming over and computer scientists, and they were basically saying, what is it? There's this great leveling of the playing field, because as more and more international students come to the United States, and probably vice versa, you're exposed to interacting with different educational systems, or products of different educational systems. And so they were saying, what is it about these kids who come out of the IIT specifically and come to the United States, and what makes them so well versed in computer science and in these other math/CSS types of areas of study? These kids are basically in school, I think 6, if not 7 days a week, and for 12 hours a day. And then they literally start at 7 o'clock in the morning. They go for the full day. They maybe get a half an hour break, and then they do more homework at home. So if you just extrapolate that kind of educational routine to compare it to what we're doing here.
What's the point? Why are they so angry?
They're so angry.
Why are they so angry at us? Why are they studying so hard?
They're just studying.
Because it's going to be on the test?
So the point is that there are different approaches. There are different ways to skin a cat. Sorry to offend any cat lovers out there.
Hey, easy.
Are you one? Do you have any sort of soft spot?
Soft spot for a cat?
We need more cats to chase the rats.
I'll go out and say that's about the only thing I like about cats. I'm sorry to offend everybody out there, which is usually what I do, but I think you just either grow up cat lover or dog lover. Sometimes it's both. I don't know. I love all animals. I never warmed up to a cat because they kind of don't warm up to you. They do their own thing.
They're a little bit more selfish. A lot more selfish. They're entirely selfish.
Well, let me tell you, if you have a problem, like a rodent problem or a mouse or something, you get yourself a cat.
So maybe that's what we should need. We should just populate New York. We're going to come up with all the solutions now. This last little segment is going to be not about education that has to do with academia. It has to do with educating yourself on how to solve New York City's problems.
That would be kind of cool, all the little facts. Aren't there some islands in the Caribbean or someplace that have lots of cats for either a mongoose or some kind of rodent problems?
There probably are. You mean they imported them?
At some point, yeah, but that seems to be ringing a bell somewhere.
We're going to have to look that one up.
The listener might email me with
I want those people who emailed you about the Grimm brothers as opposed to the Hans Christian.
I was happy, but it was interesting. It was 3 people, and I was like, oh, thank God. Thank you for listening, listener.
That's why you're here, so that you can address all the errors. Errata. That's what we're going to do. Our next show is going to be errata.
It has to be called errata, though.
Of course. And then we're just going to go through and pick up all the things that we got wrong. All the times that we said, is that the way it is? I don't know. I think so. Then we're going to go back and
sure
fix
of
it all.
ourselves.
The one thing that I do know is that...
Time's up on the show?
No.
Oh.
Didn't you notice that?
I don't know. There's not much else I think you could be that confident about knowing other than the timer on this sucker.
We were talking about...
Go ahead.
That's giving me a lot of credit there.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know where we are. Remember when you do those interviews when you're trying to assess neurological status and you ask patient is oriented
funny story about that.
Person, place, and time?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your funny story?
On the psychiatry rotation, they would give you this list of 40 or 50 questions. What time is it? What day of the week is it?
For the doctor or for the patient?
For the patient. When you're learning it and you're rotating in psychiatry, you get all these questions you ask. And then the last question was something like, who's the president?
Right.
And I remember you get through 39, 40 questions, and then you get the last one, who's the president? They're Dwight Eisenhower. And you're like, oh my God. And you realize that everything else you just asked
was completely off.
Why didn't I start with who's the president? And then I could have gotten rid of all the other ones.
Then I would have known that the person is not.
But you're right. But that's the big thing.
Oriented.
That's like when we write AAO times 3.
Right. We don't really do those.
Awake, alert, and oriented.
Mental status exams. That's what they were called. Just to evaluate.
We should do that in our plastic surgery practice, just to freak out the patients. Somebody comes in for a facelift or a nose job or something.
The first question you ask
we start
them,
asking
do you know who you are?
Do you know who you are? Who are these
and
two
who's the president?
idiots? I'm not getting operated on by these two people. They asked me who the president was before my facelift. That'd be kind of funny for a goof. Something to do in the last week of practice. You and I made a list once of all the funny things we thought.
That's going to be on our own bucket list. We're going to have a completely different kind of bucket list. Is going to be what to do before before we retire. But we're not discussing retirement because we're only entering our third decade of practice.
I can't believe you just owned up to that.
Well, I can attest to the fact that I started everything when I was 2 years old. So
that's true. I always forget that. I know.
That's how you reconcile those
prodigious
things.
Young child you were.
But there are so many rules and regulations that we do need to abide by. And I think for the most part, they make sense. But then there are these wacky things that I think are put together by some administrators somewhere. And eventually we're going to do away with all of that when we run the world, when we're on top of the world.
Everybody wants to rule the world.
Yes. And you and I just do, because we've created our own little world here. So
the world of Plastic Fantastic.
We're in command. And in the office too. But I think one of the things that's important is that we do care. And so it's not like we need to be forced to look at things. We're constantly reading. The two main journals that plastic surgeons look at are the Journal of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery, which is familiarly called the White Journal because the cover is white. And the other one is the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. That journal is the Aesthetic Journal. And so that one focuses primarily, or entirely, I should say, on aesthetic or cosmetic surgery. And I think that's a little bit more relevant to what we do. But I also think it's very interesting because, as you always say, a lot of what we learned in reconstructive work was then transferred into or applied to the cosmetic aspects of what we do as plastic surgeons. So there are lots of new advances technologically that are primarily done with reconstructive plastic surgery that then find their way into cosmetic surgery.
Yeah, if you look at the history of plastic surgery, all the big advances have happened after the major wars. Like, there's a big jump, obviously, was after World War I. And then there was another big jump after World War II. And even in the modern wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, microvascular reconstruction and particularly limb reattachment and even transgender surgery grew out of those wars because of a lot of the IEDs and the disfiguring injuries that happened to legs, arms, even genitalia. Now, those advances for reconstruction have now moved into the transgender surgery world as well, based on those wars, surgery. Which is interesting. Yeah.
And the other thing is that the Defense Department, the government actually funds a lot of research that has to do with, as you say, these military injuries or injuries that are sustained during conflicts and military engagements. And then they are then incorporated into the civilian world for other types of surgery. So another one of these areas is this whole concept of reconstructive regenerative medicine, because, as you say, there are so many injuries that have to do with partial amputations or loss of limb and function. And so a lot of the bench work research that's being done was started and funded by the government to help with that process. And there's some really fascinating private companies that are now also doing that kind of work. So it's really a collaboration between the two. And I would also like to mention, since we're talking about education, that it's really heartwarming to see that there's still a lot of collaboration that happens at these academic centers where people are not just intellectually selfish about what they've come up with, but there's a lot of conversation and discussion with other universities across the world where people will not just collaborate, but will combine their knowledge and their resources in order to make things better. And I think that's one of the things that still makes medicine a really wonderful profession to be part of, is that we still have this sense that we're helping the world one individual at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds a little cliche, but it's still working.
This comes up a lot in burn surgery, which you and I have done before, and they always say a burn changes somebody's life forever, even if it's a tiny one, obviously, if it's a big one. To people, they will always remember that scar, and they'll always remember that kind of injury. So you're right, it does make a very, very big difference. You're listening to Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Olivia Hutchinson.
And Dr. Robert Sillich. We're discussing education in medicine and in life, and how it's good to
always keep learning.
Always keep learning. Always keep an open mind, too, because there's some things that you may sort of take for granted, and every once in a while there'll be a completely different perspective or point of view that may come your way that is worthwhile. And conversely, the fact that we've spent so many years and we've learned so much about things that have been done in the past. I mean, we were joking about the things that we say incorrectly, which have nothing to do with plastic surgery, which have to do with fairy tales. But there are people out there who don't know the history of certain procedures, who claim to be things that they are not, who may even be proponents of certain procedures or techniques because they have a financial interest or because they're paid consultants for that company. And it's really important to keep in mind that really behooves every individual patient to not just do their homework, but really understand who their plastic surgeon is and why education is such an important part of deciding on who you're going to choose as your surgeon. Because we've seen people who repeat the mistakes of the past, and that's because they're not aware of it. They didn't do all the training. Or
people that take something from the past and then repackage it as something new. But I'm not going there. We did it last week. I'm not doing it again. We'll talk about it next time.
And that's why it's really important to know what not to do. Retractions are rather few and far between. There'll be a whole lot of hype about some new procedures or some new techniques, lasers that are constantly being touted as the next big thing, technological advances with all sorts of products, and that concept that the new holy grail has just been discovered. But even if those things eventually...
We should save this for Errata. The Errata show.
When things don't pan out, it's not publicized nearly as far and wide as the original launch. Our next show will be on Errata. In the meantime, if you have any questions for us or comments or suggestions, please email us, plasticfantasticshow@gmail.com. You've been listening to Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Robert Silic.
And Dr. Olivia Hutchinson. You said burrata? The cheese? I'm sorry. I was thinking we were going to do a food
Is it lunchtime?
episode. When can we do a food episode?
We're going to do another food episode.
I'm begging for it, man.
We always sort of veer. Well, today we veered off into the movies. Next time we're going to veer off into...
Rats?
No, see, that's why we couldn't talk about food, because we were talking about...
I know, but we really
vermin.
veered. We got rats in there. We got Top Gun in there. It's a lot of stuff going on.
It's a lot of stuff. It's summertime. Everything goes. Come on. That's the fun thing about summer, is that you can just do your own thing.
I like it.
Thanks for listening, and say some more interesting things for you next time.
See you next week.
You've been listening to Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Robert Silic and Dr. Olivia Hutchinson. Produced by Mike Scheck. This is Bill Eugene speaking. Got a question? Email plasticfantasticshow@gmail.com. And be sure to listen right here every week for another episode of Plastic Fantastic with Dr. Robert Silic and Dr. Olivia Hutchinson.